First Contact's price. The red dust of Mars swirled around the protective dome of New Armstrong Base, humanity's first permanent settlement on the red planet. 16-year-old Zara Williams pressed her hand against the transparent barrier, watching the storm rage outside, while her classmates chatted excitedly behind her about tomorrow's field trip to the dig site. Still brooding about being stuck here for your junior year. The familiar voice of Dr. Williams, her mother and the base's chief cynoarchaeologist, carried a hint of amusement. "I just don't see why we had to move to Mars of all places," Zara muttered, though her heart wasn't really in the complaint anymore. After 6 months on the red planet, she'd grown accustomed to the routine of base life, even as she missed Earth's blue skies. Because, her mother said, settling beside her at the viewport, "This is the most important discovery in human history. Those ruins we found. They're not just ancient. They predate Earth's earliest civilizations by millions of years." Zara had heard this speech before, but something in her mother's tone was different today. "You found something new, didn't you?" Dr. Williams smiled, her dark eyes twinkling with excitement. "That's classified until tomorrow's field trip, but let's just say you might actually enjoy this one." The next morning, Zara stood with her 15 classmates, the entire teenage population of New Armstrong Base, at the entrance to the dig site. The massive cavern had been discovered 3 months ago, when ground-penetrating radar revealed an artificial structure buried beneath the Martian surface. Professor Roth, their history teacher, adjusted his environment suit's communications link. "Remember, this is a working archaeological site. Touch nothing without permission. The artifacts here are older than our entire species." Zara followed the group into the cavern, trying not to show her interest as they passed various excavation sites. Teams of scientists worked carefully, documenting every fragment and marking grid coordinates. But something felt different today. There was an underlying tension in the air, a sense of anticipation she couldn't explain. Her mother led them deeper into the complex, past chambers filled with strange markings and defunct machinery, until they reached a newly excavated section. "This chamber was unsealed just yesterday," Dr. Williams announced, her voice carrying a barely contained excitement. "What we found inside changes everything we thought we knew about ancient Mars." The chamber walls were covered in intricate patterns that seemed to shift and move in the light of their helmet lamps. But it was the object at the center of the room that caught Zara's attention, a floating crystalline structure, suspended in midair without any visible support. "That's impossible," Professor Roth whispered. "It's been active all this time." "Active and waiting," Dr. Williams confirmed. "We've detected no power source, no mechanism for the levitation. It defies every law of physics we know." Zara felt drawn to the crystal, which pulsed with a faint inner light. As her classmates murmured and took photos, she found herself moving closer, despite her mother's earlier warning about touching artifacts. The crystal's surface seemed to ripple like water as she approached. In its depths, she caught glimpses of strange images, vast starships, alien worlds, beings of pure energy locked in combat. Her hand reached out, almost of its own accord. "Zara, don't." Her mother's warning came too late. The moment her fingers touched the crystal, the world exploded into light. Knowledge and memories not her own flooded her mind. A war that had raged across galaxies, 2 ancient races so advanced they had transcended physical form, fighting over the very nature of existence itself. The Ascended, who believed in preserving free will and natural evolution, against the Shapers, who sought to guide and control all life toward their vision of perfection. Their war had devastated countless civilizations, leaving Mars and many other worlds as lifeless monuments to their conflict. Zara tried to pull away, but the crystal held her fast. Through the overwhelming flood of information, she heard voices speaking directly into her mind. After eons of waiting, a suitable intermediary has been found. But this one is merely a child, for a species that has barely begun to grasp spaceflight. Perhaps that is exactly what we need, one unburdened by the weight of ancient prejudices. The voices fell silent, but Zara could feel their presence lingering in her mind. When she'd finally managed to break contact with the crystal, she found herself on her knees, gasping for breath. The chamber was in chaos, emergency lights flashing, scientists rushing around, her mother kneeling beside her with panic in her eyes. "I'm okay," Zara managed to say, though she felt anything but okay. Her mind was still reeling from the contact, trying to process the vast amount of information that had been downloaded into it. "But I think we're all in trouble." As if in response to her words, the crystal pulsed brightly, and a holographic display filled the chamber. It showed the space around Mars, where dozens of massive ships were appearing from what looked like tears in the fabric of space itself. "What are they?" Professor Roth asked, his voice trembling. Zara stood slowly, supported by her mother. She knew, somehow, exactly what they were seeing. They're the Ascended and the Shapers. They'd detected the crystal's activation. She swallowed hard, looking at the frightened faces around her. And now Earth is caught in the middle of their war. The crystal pulsed again, and Zara felt its consciousness brush against her mind. She understood then that she hadn't been chosen by accident. Somehow, this ancient artifact had been waiting for someone like her, young enough to be free of preconceptions, human enough to understand the value of both freedom and guidance, and just stubborn enough to stand up to beings who had long ago forgotten what it meant to compromise. "Mom," she said, her voice stronger now, "I need to tell you and the others what I saw, and then we need to contact Earth." She looked up at the holographic display, where more ships were appearing by the moment. "We don't have much time." In the next few hours, as the alien fleets positioned themselves around Mars and emergency messages were sent to Earth, Zara began to understand the true weight of what had happened. She wasn't just a teenager anymore. She had become humanity's first contact with not one, but two ancient alien civilizations. And somehow she had to find a way to prevent their war from destroying her home and everyone she loved. The crystal hummed softly behind her, a constant reminder of the knowledge and responsibility that had been thrust upon her. As she watched the alien ships through the base's telescopes, Zara realized that the future of not just humanity, but countless other species across the galaxy might depend on what she did next. She only hoped she was ready for the challenge. Part 2. The Memory Keepers. 3 days had passed since Zara's contact with the crystal, and Earth's governments were still arguing about how to respond to the alien fleets now surrounding Mars. Inside New Armstrong Base's secure conference room, Zara sat with her head in her hands, trying to sort through the flood of alien memories that kept surfacing in her mind. "Tell us again about the Ascended," General Rivera said, his holographic image flickering slightly due to the communication delay between Earth and Mars. "What exactly are their capabilities?" Zara straightened in her chair, feeling the weight of dozens of eyes on her, both in person and through various holographic feeds. It's hard to explain in human terms. They evolved beyond physical form millions of years ago. They exist as pure energy now, but they can create physical manifestations when they need to interact with our realm. And their technology, another official pressed. "Beyond anything we can comprehend," Zara replied, rubbing her temples. They don't build ships like we do. They grow them from raw energy, shape space itself to travel. She paused, sorting through the fragments of knowledge in her head. But that's not what's important right now. Dr. Reeves, the base's chief physicist, leaned forward. Then what is important, Zara? The crystal didn't just give me information about their technology, Zara explained. It showed me why they're fighting. The Ascended believe all species should develop naturally, make their own mistakes, find their own path. The Shapers, she shuddered, remembering the cold certainty she'd felt in their memories. They think that's too dangerous. They want to guide every civilization's development, ensure they all follow the correct path. And what's wrong with that? Someone asked. Maybe they have humanity's best interests at heart. No, Zara said firmly. You don't understand. Their guidance means complete control. They've destroyed entire civilizations that refuse to follow their plan. The Ascended fought back because they saw what was happening, but their war, she gestured to the window, where the dust storms of Mars raged. This planet used to be like Earth. There was life here, a developing civilization. The war between the Ascended and the Shapers ended all of that. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Earth's most powerful leaders, watching through their holographic projections, looked distinctly uncomfortable. There's something else, Zara added, her voice quieter now. The crystal, it's not just a record keeper, it's alive in its own way. It was created as a kind of mediator, I think. A tool to help end the war. But it needed someone who could understand both sides while being completely separate from their conflict. A human, her mother said softly. A young human, Zara corrected. Someone who hasn't learned to think in absolutes yet. That's why it chose me. But I'm not sure I can. She broke off as a sharp pain lanced through her head. The crystal, stored in a secure chamber nearby, was calling to her. Through the walls, through the security measures, she could feel its urgent pulse. They're moving, she gasped, pressing her hands to her temples. Both fleets. They're repositioning. Something's about to happen. General Rivera barked orders to his staff, and new holographic displays sprang to life, showing the positions of the alien vessels. True to Zara's warning, both fleets were shifting, taking up aggressive formations. Can you communicate with them? Rivera demanded. Tell them to stay away from Earth. Zara shook her head. Not like this. I need to be in direct contact with the crystal. It amplifies the connection, lets me. Absolutely not, her mother interrupted. The first contact nearly overwhelmed you. A second cold. Could what? Zara stood, facing the room. Kill me. If we don't do something, Earth could end up like Mars. Everything we've ever known, everyone we've ever loved, gone. Just another casualty in their war. She turned to General Rivera. I need access to the crystal. Now. After a tense moment, Rivera nodded. Do it. But we're monitoring everything. Any sign of danger, we shut it down. Minutes later, Zara stood before the crystal in its secure chamber. Its glow had intensified. Pulses of light synchronized with the throbbing in her head. She reached out, fingers trembling slightly. Be careful, her mother whispered from behind the safety barrier. Zara touched the crystal's surface, and the world dissolved into light and memory. She saw the wars beginning, two species achieving enlightenment, diverging in their views of how to treat lesser races. She felt their first conflicts, their gradual transformation into energy beings, the escalation that led to the devastation of countless worlds. But this time, something was different. The memories seemed clearer, more focused. The crystal was teaching her, preparing her for what she needed to do. Your kind is young, a voice echoed in her mind, one of the Ascended. You cannot hope to comprehend the scope of this conflict. Perhaps that is precisely why the child must be heard. Another voice countered, a shaper, surprisingly. Their species' potential is intriguing. Zara gathered her courage and projected her thoughts outward. You're both wrong. We understand more than you think. Every human child learns what you've forgotten. How to see things from other perspectives, how to compromise. Compromise leads to chaos, the Shaper argued. And control leads to stagnation, the Ascended countered. Estopa. Zara's mental shout surprised even her. Just stop. Look at what you've become. You're so convinced you're right that you've forgotten how to listen, to learn. The crystal chose me because humans are still learning, still growing. We make mistakes, we argue, we fight. But we also change. When's the last time either of your species actually changed? The silence that followed was deafening. Through the crystal's power, Zara could sense the alien fleets, feel the weight of eons pressing down on these ancient beings as they considered her words. You have given us much to consider, young one, the Ascended finally responded. We will withdraw our fleet to neutral space, for now. As will we, the Shaper agreed. But this discussion is not over. No, Zara thought, a plan already forming in her mind. It's just beginning. Because I have something to show both of you, something you've forgotten how to see. As the alien presences faded and Zara's consciousness returned to her body, she found herself smiling despite her exhaustion. The crystal had chosen well, not because she was special, but because she was human. And maybe that was exactly what this ancient conflict needed. A reminder of what it meant to be young, to be flexible, to be able to see the world through new eyes. They're retreating, General Rivera announced, studying the tactical displays. Both fleets are pulling back. What did you say to them? I told them the truth, Zara said, still leaning against the crystal for support. And I offered to teach them something they've forgotten. She looked at her mother, seeing both pride and worry in her eyes. But we're going to need help. As many young people as we can get, from all over Earth. Because if we're going to teach ancient energy beings how to compromise, we're going to need all the different perspectives we can find. The crystal pulsed softly behind her, and Zara felt its approval. The real work was just beginning, but for the first time since this started, she felt truly hopeful. Sometimes the greatest wisdom came from the most unexpected sources, even from a species that had barely taken its first steps into space. The war that had raged for millennia might finally end, not with a decisive victory, but with a lesson in humanity. Echoes of war. The United Nations Special Assembly Hall buzzed with tension as Zara faced the gathered representatives. 2 weeks had passed since her proposal, and Earth's governments had finally agreed to hear her plan. Behind her, a holographic projection of the crystal pulsed gently, its light casting strange shadows across the ancient chamber. We've selected 30 young people from different cultures and backgrounds, she explained, her voice steady despite her nerves. Each one brings a unique perspective, a different way of seeing the world. That's what the Ascended and Shapers have lost, the ability to see things through new eyes. And you believe children can succeed where advanced alien beings have failed. The Chinese representative's tone carried clear skepticism. We're not just children, Zara countered. We're the first generation to grow up in a truly connected world. We understand something these ancient races have forgotten, that there's strength in diversity, in different viewpoints. The Russian delegate leaned forward. And what of the risks? These beings turned Mars into a wasteland. They could do the same to Earth. That's exactly why we have to try, Zara said. They're watching us right now. Both fleets have withdrawn, but they're waiting to see what we'll do. If we can show them a new way." A murmur ran through the assembly as the crystal's glow intensified. Zara felt the familiar pressure in her mind. The aliens were listening, observing this crucial moment. "The candidates are ready," Dr. Reeves announced, stepping forward. "Each one has been tested for psychological resilience and empathic capacity. They understand the risks." Zara nodded, thinking of the intense screening process they'd developed. The 30 chosen ones, ranging from 13 to 17 years old, had proven themselves exceptional not in traditional ways, but in their ability to understand and bridge different viewpoints. "There's something else you need to know," Zara added, taking a deep breath. "The crystal. It's been changing. Every time I connect with it, I understand more. It wasn't just waiting for humans, it was waiting for the right moment in our development. A time when we could truly appreciate both perspectives." She gestured, and new holographic images appeared, scenes from human history showing both the perils of absolute control and the chaos of complete freedom. "We've struggled with these same questions throughout our history. The balance between guidance and freedom, between order and chaos. We're still struggling with them. That's what makes us perfect mediators." The assembly hall erupted in discussion, but a sudden spike of pain in Zara's head cut through the noise. The crystal's light flared dramatically, and new images filled the air, massive ships appearing at the edge of the solar system. "They're back," Zara gasped. "But something's wrong. They're fighting each other." Through her connection with the crystal, she could sense the conflict, factions within both the Ascended and Shapers who opposed any attempt at peace. The war that had raged for millennia threatened to reignite, with Earth caught in the crossfire. "We need to act now," she announced, her voice cutting through the panic beginning to spread through the assembly. "Get the 30 candidates to Mars immediately. We don't have time for more debate." To her surprise, there was little argument. Perhaps seeing the alien ships appearing on their sensors had convinced Earth's leaders that they had run out of options. Hours later, as emergency transports rushed the chosen young people to Mars, Zara stood in the crystal chamber with the first arrivals. Reg from India, whose talent for finding common ground in religious disputes had caught their attention. Lucia from Brazil, whose work in the favelas showed an incredible ability to balance community needs with individual freedoms. Thomas from Kenya, who had united rival villages through shared storytelling traditions. "What you're about to experience will be overwhelming," Zara warned them. "The crystal will share memories spanning millions of years. You'll feel the weight of ancient conflicts, the certainty of beings who have lived longer than our entire species. Your job isn't to choose sides, it's to show them something new." "How?" Lucia asked, her eyes fixed on the pulsing crystal. "By being human," Zara smiled. "By showing them that sometimes the best solutions come from seeing things through fresh eyes. Even the most ancient beings can learn from the young." The crystal's glow intensified as the teens formed a circle around it. Above Mars, the rebel factions of both alien races drew closer, their weapons capable of rendering planets lifeless. "Remember," Zara said, reaching for the crystal's surface, "we're not here to end their war through force or fear. We're here to show them a better way. Ready?" The others nodded, and as one, they reached out to touch the crystal. The chamber filled with light as 30 young minds, each carrying their own unique perspective on the balance between guidance and freedom, made contact with beings who had forgotten how to see the world through anything but their own absolute certainty. The crystal's power surged through them, connecting their consciousness not just to the warring aliens, but to each other. Zara felt their minds linking, creating something the universe had never seen before, a bridge between the wisdom of ages and the fresh insight of youth. Through their shared connection, they began to show the ancient races something revolutionary. That truth wasn't absolute, that wisdom could come from innocence, and that sometimes the greatest power lay not in victory, but in the willingness to learn from those you thought had nothing to teach you. Above them, the rebel ships hesitated, their weapons powered but unfired, as if sensing that something unprecedented was occurring on the red planet below. The war that had lasted millennia hung in the balance, and its fate now rested in the hands of 30 young humans who dared to believe they could teach the universe's oldest beings a lesson about peace. The crystal pulsed with an intensity Zara had never felt before, and she knew they were about to attempt something that had never been tried in the history of the galaxy. A conversation between the newest sentients and the oldest, with the future of countless worlds hanging on its outcome. Show them, she thought to her companions, feeling their courage and determination flowing through the crystal's network. Show them what it means to be human. The human element. Through the crystal's vast network of consciousness, 31 young minds reached out across the cosmos. The sensation was beyond anything they had prepared for, like being everywhere and nowhere at once, touching minds that had witnessed the birth and death of stars. Zara felt herself becoming the anchor point, the bridge between human consciousness and alien understanding. Through her connection, she could sense the others each contributing their unique perspectives to the cosmic conversation. Observe, the voice of an ascended commander resonated through their shared consciousness. They link their minds yet retain individual thought patterns. Fascinating. Inefficient came the counter from a Shaper elder. Their chaos breeds confusion. Rage's consciousness surged forward, carrying with it memories of his homeland. 1 billion people with different beliefs and customs, somehow forming a unified whole. Our differences are our strength, his thoughts echoed. Like the many instruments in an orchestra creating harmony from diversity. The alien minds recoiled slightly, unused to such direct metaphorical thinking. But Zara could sense something else, curiosity, perhaps even wonder, at this new way of seeing things. Above Mars, the rebel ships continued their advance, but slower now, as if their commanders were distracted by the unprecedented psychic exchange taking place below. Lucia shared her experiences next, images of life in the Favelas, where strict order and wild freedom danced a daily ballet. Through her memories, the aliens witnessed how communities found balance, not through imposed rules or complete autonomy, but through constant adaptation and mutual understanding. This, flexibility, a Shaper consciousness mused. It defies optimization, yet produces results we never conceived, an Ascended countered. Thomas brought forth his memories of tribal storytelling circles, where ancient rivalries were settled not through force or regulation, but through shared narratives that helped each side see through the other's eyes. The alien minds struggled to process this concept, the idea that truth could have many faces, all equally valid. The crystal's power surged as more memories flowed, 30 different perspectives on the eternal dance between chaos and order, freedom and guidance. Each young mind offered something unique. A Chinese student shared how her culture balanced traditional hierarchy with modern independence. An Australian Aboriginal teen demonstrated how his people's Dreamtime stories united past and present. A Romanian girl showed how her community preserved old ways while embracing new ones. But it was more than just memories. With each shared experience, the crystal helped translate human emotions into something the ancient beings could comprehend. They felt the joy of discovery, the comfort of guidance, the thrill of independence, the security of belonging. feelings they had long ago sacrificed in their pursuit of absolute ideals. They are teaching us, an ascended elder realized with apparent shock. These brief, chaotic beings are actually teaching us. Impossible, a Shaper commander argued, but there was uncertainty in the thought. Zara seized the moment. Not teaching, reminding. You were like us once. You felt these things, understood these truths. But somewhere along the way, you forgot that wisdom isn't about finding the one perfect answer. It's about understanding that there are always new answers to find. The rebel ships had completely halted now, their commanders fully engrossed in the unprecedented exchange. Through the crystal's network, Zara could sense the confusion and uncertainty rippling through both fleets as they grappled with concepts they hadn't considered in millions of years. But there was danger in this moment too. She could feel the strain on her fellow humans. 30 young minds weren't meant to channel this much alien consciousness. The crystal was helping, acting as a buffer and translator, but they were all approaching their limits. We need to show them one more thing, she thought to her human companions. The most human thing of all. Understanding flowed through their connection. As one, they began to share their deepest hopes and fears, their dreams for the future, their willingness to admit they didn't have all the answers. They showed the aliens something they had forgotten how to do. How to be vulnerable, how to acknowledge uncertainty, how to learn and grow and change. The effect was electric. The crystal's glow became almost blinding as the alien minds reeled from this new perspective. The concept of embracing uncertainty, of finding strength in admitting one's limitations. It challenged everything both the Ascended and Shapers had built their societies upon. This is why the crystal chose them. A new voice emerged, something ancient and vast, woven into the crystal itself. Not because they have the answers, but because they know how to seek them. Not because they are perfect, but because they understand the perfect is the enemy of the good. The rebel ships began to power down their weapons. Across the solar system, both fleets shifted from battle positions to neutral stances. Something fundamental had changed in the minds of these ancient beings, a crack in their certainty, a glimmer of something they had lost eons ago. But as the tension in space began to ease, Zara felt the human minds connected to the crystal starting to fade. They had pushed themselves to their absolute limits, and even with the crystal's help, human consciousness could only endure so much contact with such vast alien minds. We have to disconnect, she sent urgently to the alien consciousnesses. But this isn't the end, it's just the beginning. Yes, came the surprising chorus of agreement from both Ascended and Shaper minds. We have much to reconsider. As Zara began the delicate process of severing the connections, she felt something else through the crystal. A sense of respect from these ancient beings, not for humanity's technology or power, but for something far more precious. Our ability to change, to grow, to see the world through new eyes. The war that had raged for millennia hadn't been ended through force or negotiation, but through something far more powerful, the simple, profound wisdom of seeing things from a new perspective. And as the 31 young humans finally broke contact with the crystal, exhausted but triumphant, they knew they had done more than just prevent a war. They had taught the universe's oldest beings how to be young again. Peace through understanding. 1 month after the unprecedented mental connection that changed the course of galactic history, New Armstrong Base had been transformed. The once military facility now housed the first Galactic Cultural Exchange Center, where representatives of both ancient races came to learn from humanity in their own manifested physical forms. Zara stood at her favorite viewport, watching the Martian sunset paint the sky in shades of pink and orange. Behind her, she could hear the soft hum of conversation. Human teenagers teaching ancient energy beings about everything from music to cooking to sports. The absurdity of it all still made her smile. "They're like children discovering the world anew," her mother commented, joining her at the window. "Hard to believe these are the same beings who nearly destroyed our solar system." "That's exactly what they needed to become," Zara replied. "The crystal showed me their entire history. They didn't start out as rigid, absolute beings. They learned to be that way, convinced themselves that certainty was the same thing as truth. They just needed to remember how to wonder again." In the main chamber, a group of ascended manifestations, appearing as tall, luminescent figures, were attempting to understand the concept of dancing. Their movements were stiff, uncertain, but their energy patterns showed genuine joy in the learning process. Nearby, several Shaper representatives, choosing to appear as geometric patterns of shifting light, were engaged in a heated debate with human teens about the subjective nature of art. "The council wants to speak with you," her mother said softly. "About what happens next." Zara nodded. She'd been expecting this. The crystal had been changing, evolving along with the unprecedented relationship it was helping to forge. Its power had grown, but so had its purpose. In the newly constructed council chamber, representatives from Earth, the Ascended, and the Shapers waited. The crystal floated at the center of the room, its glow gentle and steady. As Zara entered, she felt its familiar touch on her mind, no longer overwhelming, but comfortable, like an old friend. "Young mediator," the Ascended speaker began, its form shimmering with respect. "We have come to a decision about the future of our race's interaction with humanity. We believe," the Shaper representative added, its geometric form pulsing thoughtfully, "that we have as much to learn from your species as you have to learn from us." Admiral Hassan, representing Earth, cleared his throat. "What they're trying to say, Zara, is that they want to establish permanent cultural exchange programs. Not just here on Mars, but across Earth, and eventually on other worlds as we expand into space. But with conditions," the Ascended speaker continued. "We will share our knowledge gradually, allowing your species to develop at its own pace. No shortcuts to advancement that might rob you of the very perspective that makes you unique. And we," the Shaper representative added, "will learn to appreciate the value of natural development, of letting cultures find their own path while offering guidance only when asked." Zara felt the crystal's approval radiating through her mind. This was what it had been waiting for, not just an end to the war, but the beginning of something entirely new. "There's more," Admiral Hassan said. "The crystal, it's been communicating with our scientists. It wasn't just a mediator for their war. It was a seed, planted by the original creators of both races, waiting for the right moment, the right species, to help create something new." "A bridge," Zara finished, understanding flowing through her connection with the crystal. "Not just between their two races, but between the old and the new, the certain and the wondering, the teacher and the student." The crystal pulsed brightly, and its consciousness touched everyone in the room. Images flowed through their minds, a future where humanity spread to the stars not as conquerors or subjects, but as mediators, carrying with them the unique blend of wisdom and wonder that had helped end an ancient war. "We were wrong," the Ascended speaker admitted, its form flickering with what might have been embarrassment. "We thought age brought wisdom, that longer existence meant greater understanding. We forgot that sometimes the youngest eyes see most clearly." "And we," the Shaper representative added, "forgot that control without growth is stagnation, that perfect order is another name for death. Your species reminded us that chaos and harmony are not opposites, but partners in the dance of existence." Zara stepped forward, placing her hand on the crystal. So what happens now? The answer came not from any of the representatives, but from the crystal itself, sharing its vision through their connected minds. They saw great academies being built, where young humans would learn from ancient alien teachers while teaching them in return. They saw ships of human design enhanced by alien wisdom, carrying this new understanding to the stars. They saw other young races being discovered, brought into this growing exchange of perspectives. Now, Admiral Hassan said, smiling, "We begin the real work, building something that's never existed before, a true bridge between the wisdom of ages and the wonder of youth." As the vision faded, Zara looked around the chamber at these beings who had once been bitter enemies. The war that had raged for millennia had ended not with a victory, but with a transformation. The crystal pulsed one final time, showing her a glimpse of distant galaxies where other seeds like itself waited, ready to help other young races forge their own bridges when the time was right. "We are ready to begin," the Ascended and Shaper representatives said in unison, their forms shifting to more closely resemble their human students, a symbolic gesture of their new understanding. Zara smiled, feeling the weight of the future settling comfortably on her shoulders. The universe was vast, filled with wonders and mysteries beyond counting. And now, for the first time in millions of years, both the oldest and youngest minds in the galaxy were ready to explore it together, each learning from the other, each growing in their own way. The crystal's light bathed them all in its glow, a testament to the truth that had ended an ancient war. Sometimes the greatest wisdom lies not in having all the answers, but in being willing to ask new questions. And sometimes the greatest teachers are those who never forget how to learn. The future beckoned, bright with possibility, as humanity prepared to take its place as the bridge between the ancient and the new, the certain and the wondering, the teachers who had learned to be students again, and the students who had something profound to teach. It was, Zara thought, just the beginning of the most amazing story ever told.